Have you thought to yourself, I cannot work another day? A few years ago, a client called me, and those were literally the first words out of his mouth. He was almost shouting at me, saying, I've had enough. How much money do I need to retire? The truth is, most people don't have any idea how much retirement will actually cost them. They've done some Googling around the internet and find some really generic numbers. But in each case, it's so different that the generic numbers will only get you so far. Many people can retire way earlier than they thought they could, but a few others, they actually have to wait longer than they expected. Today, I'm going to give you a simple system to help you determine whether you might be able to retire, and all you need to do is calculate 5 numbers. That will begin to help you create a personalized retirement plan. Imagine retiring sooner than you thought was possible. For a few of you, it may be the other way around. But let's focus on the hopeful dream of retiring with confidence before you thought you were able to. Now, I know creating a retirement plan sounds a bit daunting and difficult, but don't worry. I'm going to break it down into a step-by-step process. We're not going to be creating a full retirement plan today, but I want to give you the 5 numbers that will help you get much closer to determining whether you can afford to retire or not. So let's jump right in. The first number you need to know, and this is not going to be a shock to anyone, is your expenses. For many people, your living costs in retirement are going to be somewhere around 75 to 80% of your pre-retirement expenses. But that's just a rule of thumb. You need to know exactly what your numbers are going to be. So the first thing you need to figure out is, what are my expenses going to be? How much is my housing going to cost me? We have to think about insurance and property taxes and utilities. What about food? What about healthcare? Are my healthcare expenses going to go up, or are they going to go down in retirement? For some people, I think back to when they had really great healthcare plans at their employer and they haven't had to pay anything out of pocket ever. Now in retirement, they may need to pay for Medicare Advantage or Medicare supplements or Medicare Part D. So they're going to have some healthcare expenses that they're not used to having. Your expenses could potentially go up a little bit, but you also want to try to overestimate what your expenses are going to be. You want to build in a little bit of a margin or a buffer into that plan. You also want to make sure that you build in money to do the things you've always dreamed of in retirement. You have your base fixed expenses that you're going to have to spend no matter what, and then you have your variable fun expenses that you're going to be able to budget for as well. You want to be able to have money to go visit your family, take trips, and do the things that you like to do. You want to build that into your budget. Having an unrealistic budget is only going to end up hurting you in the long run, because just scraping by in retirement, while it's nice, you don't have to go into work anymore, it's really not the ideal retirement. You want to create a budget, not just for scraping by, but one that will allow you to live the retirement that you've always really wanted to live. Another way to calculate your retirement expenses is using our streamlined retirement budget. If you go down in the show notes, you can download our Retire Ready Toolkit in the description. It will give you access to this fill-inable PDF that walks you through exactly what you need to do. So the first number you need to know is what your expenses are going to be. The second number you need to know to experience a great retirement, and this is a little bit less common figure, is how much you need in your emergency savings fund. Before you embark on your retirement, you need a nest egg of at least around 12 months of living expenses tucked away for the unexpected. This is your insurance policy, so you don't have a surprise bill that ends up throwing your retirement plan out of whack. Maybe your water heater goes out, or your boiler, or the air conditioning breaks down, or there's large car repairs that are needed. Whatever those expenses are, you don't want to have to pull from your current retirement accounts or your monthly income or have to take a distribution earlier to pay for those. That is going to mess up your most important time in retirement, which is going to be those first 5 to 7 years. You want to know exactly where your expenses are coming from and how you can pay the bill. So if your monthly expenses are $5,000 a month, you're going to want somewhere around $60,000 in a savings account, and you want to put this into a high yield savings account or treasury bonds, someplace that is very safe and is not going to fluctuate. You don't want to have to pull it out at a loss if the market is moving. And I wouldn't even put this reserve fund and a long-term bond fund. I would keep it very safe in a savings or CD-like account. All right, let's jump into the third number that you need to know, and this is going to be your fixed income sources. This could be things like Social Security, pension income, or any income that you can guarantee will be coming in. For most retirees, guaranteed income is going to be from your Social Security income. This is going to form the base of your retirement plan. This is what everything else is going to be based upon. You want to find out exactly how much you can expect from your pension and from your Social Security income. Because let's face it, no one has a pension anymore. So it's important that we get this Social Security number correct. Whatever your fixed income sources are, those guaranteed sources of income are going to be the things that you can count on. Now, when it comes to Social Security, you can go to the Social Security Administration website, and I'll post that link in the show notes. You can pull up your exact benefit amount. So you're not guessing on what it will be, but you'll have a very clear idea of how much money you can expect will be coming in. If you do have a pension, you're one of the lucky people to have one. You might want to reach out to your plan administrator and try to get an idea of how much you can plan on and what your spousal benefit options are. That is a big factor when it comes to deciding on your pension. If you have an annuity, same thing. You want to know what your fixed income is. That is the most important number that you need to know before we can decide if you're able to retire or not. How much of your income is going to be fixed? How much of your income is going to be guaranteed? That is what we need to know what that ratio is, because that's what's going to determine what your portfolio needs to cover. So let's take a look at an example. Now that we know what our expenses are, in this case, we're going to say the expenses are $5,000 a month. Next, we need to calculate what our reserve savings needs to be. If we have $5,000 of monthly expenses times 12, we're going to need roughly $60,000 in emergency savings. The third number we need to know is how much is my fixed income and what is that guaranteed income number going to be. So in this example, we're going to say that our fixed income is $3,000 a month. So you have $3,000 a month coming in. Now we know what that fixed expenses are going to be, and we know what our fixed income is. We can begin to work around on the final two numbers. The next number, the fourth number you need to know, is what is the gap, the shortfall between your fixed expenses and your monthly income. So in this situation, our monthly expenses are $5,000 and your guaranteed income is $3,000. That means you have a gap of $2,000 a month that you need to fill. If you were to retire today and that was the only income you had coming in, then you're going to run out of money and be in a hole pretty quickly. So what you want to do is subtract your estimated Social Security, pension, and any annuity payments from your expenses to see your shortfall. But once you've done that, the question is, how do you fill the gap? The fifth number you need to know, and I'm going to cheat just a little bit because it's actually Two numbers is what's your investable assets and how much of those investable assets can you generate in reliable retirement income. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's say you have $100,000 in a Roth IRA, you have $100,000 in your traditional IRA, and you have $300,000 in your 401k account. So in total, we have $500,000 of investable assets. We're not going to include your emergency savings or your cash that you're holding on to for short-term expenses. But for long-term living expenses, you have $500,000 of investable assets. The question is, how much income can I reasonably expect to withdraw from these accounts? One rule of thumb that we've talked about in the past that a lot of retirees use is the 4% rule. And that shows us that we can take out 4% out of your investment account and adjust it for inflation each year. In our office, we use something called retirement income guardrails. So in the scenario we just laid out, you know you've got $500,000 of assets. You've got a $2,000 a month shortfall. You need about $24,000 in income. And taking out 4% of your portfolio a year simply isn't going to provide the gap. You need 24,000, but your portfolio can only generate 20,000. Now you have to begin to do some of the hard work of saying, is there a way to optimize my plan to make up for that $4,000 difference? What if I took my Social Security a bit later? Does that help close the gap? Is there any place in my budget where I could cut? Or is there a way to increase the amount of withdrawal from my investment accounts? Now, you know that I'm not a big fan of the 4% rule. It was essentially created 30 years ago when a financial advisor ran a sequence of return risk to see how much you could pull out before your account value ran to zero. In all of these different environments, good markets, bad markets, he took an account that was 50% stocks and 50% bonds. And he found that you could pull 4% a year out without it ever running out of money. Now, the problem is it's not an overly optimized portfolio and is way too conservative. If you had a better optimized portfolio, you could typically pull out at least 5.4% and possibly even more utilizing what we call our retirement income guardrails. So if we compare our two retirement income spending strategies, we have our 4% rule, which is going to give us about $20,000 of annual income. And then we have our retirement income guardrails number, which would give us about $27,000 of income. So if we look at the examples, we needed $24,000 and our income guardrails number is going to give us the $27,000 that we need to be able to fill that gap. So your retirement spending strategy and how you determine how much money you can take out of your portfolio is a very important one, because we have to be able to cover that gap. If we cannot cover our spending gap, then we have to save more or we have to work longer. But that's why this is so important, because it gives us clarity on where we're at when it comes to our retirement savings. One other variable that we didn't really talk about is taxes in retirement. And taxes is going to be very important, and it's going to be one of your largest expenses in retirement. So I have a video here that will walk through the taxes in retirement, and that should help you when you're putting together your tax plan. And I'll put that video in the show notes. In summary, the 5 numbers you need to calculate to determine if you can retire today are: number 1, you have to figure out what your expenses in retirement are going to be. 2, you have to see if your emergency fund is built up enough. We want about 12 months of living expenses in your emergency fund. Number 3 is your fixed income sources. Those are going to be Social Security, pension, or annuity. How much of those fixed income sources do we have? 4 is going to be the gap between your fixed income sources and what your expenses are going to be. And then number 5, your investable assets and how you go about taking income from those investable assets. By calculating these 5 numbers, you can begin to create a personalized retirement plan and determine if you can afford to retire or not. Remember to overestimate your expenses and build in a margin for unexpected costs. And consider the impact of taxes in retirement. If you have any questions or need help calculating your retirement plan, feel free to reach out using the link provided in the show notes. We offer a free retirement assessment for anyone who's looking to get started with their retirement plan. With careful planning and a clear understanding of your financial situation, you can work towards the retirement you've always dreamed of, knowing that you have the confidence and the clarity to spend what you want in retirement.